listening very, very carefully. Just for background, the library has a long-standing practice and policy of making library meeting rooms available on a first-come, first-served basis to any community group that needs one. And that is what occurred with this event, as it does with any other event privately booked by a community group. As stated in the library's intellectual freedom and meeting room use policies, which we have provided copies of in the back there, you're welcome to take it. It's also, I assume, on our website, or available through our website. The library makes, quote, such facilities available on an equitable basis, regardless of the beliefs or affiliations of individuals or groups requesting their use, unquote. Now, we're certainly aware of the public interest and concern regarding this event. As I indicated, we have been inundated with comments. And it is important to us that we hear every person who wants to be heard on this issue. Please note that we're not going to take any board action on this today. As with all our public comment periods, the board does not take action at the hearings. We want to make sure we get a full flavor and enough time to digest those comments. Our current policies do affirm the right of this meeting to take place at the library. We may take this topic up at a future meeting, but our primary interest at this time is in hearing from community members who are asking for their opinions to be heard and acknowledged. Our job today as a board during this public comment period is to listen carefully to each of you and to ensure this is a safe place to have your voices heard. To that end, we have a few things you should know about how we want this to work today. Every speaker who has added their names to our sign-up sheet will be given 3 minutes to speak. If you haven't had a chance to add your name, please do so now. We'll plan to go until every person who wants to has had a chance to share their thoughts. If you would prefer not to share your thoughts in front of this room with people, and we understand this can be intimidating, you can fill out a comment card and we will be sure to review that after this meeting has adjourned. If at any point you are feeling the need to take a break and need a quiet place to do so, you're welcome once again to use room 2 to take the time you need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the list in the order that they were signed and invite you to come up to the podium, I guess. And Amy, where are you? Has a little card for the 3 minutes to show respect to everybody else. So we urge you to be respectful that there are other people behind you. And I would just say, we intend to listen very carefully, so if you don't need to repeat what someone else has said, that's always welcome. You'll have your 3 minutes as you choose. So without further ado, we begin. And I'm going to apologize if either I can't read or I mess up the pronunciation. But the first person is Melinda M. Welcome.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thank you, and thanks for having this special meeting today. I appreciate your openness to all of the comments here. My name is Melinda. I am a 54-year-old lifelong leftist, atheist, anti-racist feminist. I'm here to encourage the Seattle Public Library to uphold its room rental with the Women's Liberation Front and to allow the feminist panel of Kara Dansky, Megan Murphy, and Saba Malik to proceed. I've been reading Megan Murphy's Feminist Current website for several years. Anyone who reads her work will see that she's never advocated hatred, violence, or denial of rights to anyone on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or any other trait. She's a thoughtful woman who tirelessly reports on issues affecting women around the globe, including our rapidly eroding right to sex-segregated spaces. Some transgender activists say that feminists like Megan Murphy and others are denying transgender people's right to exist. This is an absurd and abusive accusation. It's only ever leveled at women, at feminists, and it is designed to deny women our right to speak. Disagreement is not denial of existence. Those of us who believe that women have the right to sex-segregated sports, jails, rape crisis centers, and locker rooms are not Nazis, we are not bigots, we are not TERFs, and we are not a tiny fringe minority of the population. The mere fact that there is so much controversy over this panel has to point to the very acute need to discuss these issues publicly. Women, adult human females, have a stake in public policies that affect our own safety, privacy, and our ability to name ourselves as a class of people. I understand that some people adamantly disagree with the Wolf panel on these issues, and that some people want sex-segregated spaces abolished. Okay, I get it. I'm not for abolishing anyone's rights, but we have a strong disagreement. It's a strong disagreement that needs to be discussed openly. Why? Why would it be that those who disagree with these women have veto power over their right to speak? And moreover, why would you imagine that you have veto power over my right to hear them? Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, thank you.
Thank you for hosting us today. It was an interesting meeting. I love libraries, I'm sure we all do. A little background on me. I'm also a mother, put a couple people through college and they're employed. I've lived in Seattle since 1972. I actually moved up from Tacoma. I worked on the political candidacy, the first Black gubernatorial candidate of Washington State. His name was Carl Maxey. I was 18 and I was working the Hilltop District of Tacoma, knocking on doors. My candidate didn't win, but I went on. I worked in the National Organization of Women. I was concerned with children and women's issues. In 1983, I had to put a man in jail in Seattle. He went down for a year. It was a public sexual assault. And on top of a childhood of rape and abuse, it took a lot for me to regain my sense of security in public. And it was profound. Took 15 years of therapy, meditation, hands-on energy healing. I mean, I've done everything so that I could learn to live. And so I have great compassion for others who suffer from any sort of violence. I would not want them on anyone, but I feel that I'm in this room today because I feel that my needs are not being heard. In 2015, Seattle passed a gender-neutral policy. In 2016, the Seattle Times reported in June that reported rapes were up 50%. There was no discussion. I'm not saying causation. I'm just saying there was no discussion, and then there was a person who came to the Evans pool and frightened a 70-year-old woman with male nudity, which is tolerated because the male person had said, I identify as a woman. After that, and I used to work for the Parks Department, I haven't gone back to a public pool. I've been a taxpayer and a homeowner here since 1975. I have tremendous compassion for the rights of our minorities. I worked for gay, lesbian, Black, poor, disabled in my day. And I am here because I want my voice for sex-based protections. I believe, just like Wolf, that I want to see end to male violence, yay! I want to see a return of my reproductive autonomy, and I want to see a dismantling of a gender caste system that is now silencing women like me from saying, women don't have penises, and that is what I object to. Thank you for hosting us. It's a very difficult issue, and I hope everyone is well.
Thank you. Jonah Nix.
Excuse me. First off, I want to say I think that your move to forgive these fines is so great. I haven't heard about that. I think that's wonderful. and I just wanted to express my gratitude for that. I think the law is very clear that the Women's Liberation Front does have a right to hold the event. I think the law is very clear that the library must remain viewpoint neutral, and that if you were to cancel the event based solely on the views being presented, that would be a violation of their First Amendment rights, and I think that is really practically all that matters. But I would like to take a moment to impress on the board and to those listening about how important free speech rights are for everyone, and that if you were to establish a precedent that free speech rights can be violated because of community outrage, you are going to harm the people you want to protect a lot more than the people you may not like. Because the fact is, as much as some cynical and dishonest right-wing and conservative actors like to pretend, free speech rights in this country are significantly violated for leftists and progressives, more than any conservatives or right-wingers. We can look at in college campuses, more left-wing and progressive professors and student groups are shut down. We can look at the fact that the police are much more likely to investigate people for anti-police or anti-racist or anti-sexist activism than any other forms of so-called conservative activism. I know from my own experience, I have been harassed and intimidated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation because of my free speech when I advocate for environmental issues and against colonialism and white supremacy in this country, whereas meanwhile those who have threatened to kill and murder my indigenous and colonized colleagues and activist partners have never been criticized, never even been looked at by the FBI. So if you establish this precedent, right, you're going to end up hurting people who need these protections more. And so I would just encourage you to say that if you to allow this event to go forward and to see it not as a grudging thing you have to do because of the law, but instead a way for you to show that everybody deserves those rights and that the people who are being routinely denied, which are mainly minorities, oppressed people around the world, having their free speech rights removed, that those need to be protected. And the only way you're going to do that is fight back against the idea that the government or community outreach has the right to silence people, because that will only backfire and already does backfire, especially in this climate where Donald Trump is passing anti-Semitic and racist executive orders that are attempting to shut down legitimate criticism of Israeli occupation. They're not following Nazis. They're going after so-called black identity extremists who are just resisting white supremacy, as they have every right and reason to do. And in that climate, allowing for the government to decide who can and can't speak will only hurt the powerless, and it will only benefit the powerful. So I encourage you to support this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Dancer.
I am looking forward to attending the February 1st event. Please don't cancel it. The issue is not whether the library should allow hate speech, because Wolf is not a hate group, and the speakers don't engage in hate speech. They, and those of us who want to hear them, strongly oppose discrimination against transgender people. In fact, most of us have spent our lives fighting sex stereotypes and the oppression they create. We simply don't agree that trans women are women, and we disagree with the policies based on that mantra. That doesn't mean we deny people's existence or we want them dead, as our would-be censors are libelously claiming online. Moreover, please note that our position is based in science. I implore you to read the article that I attached to the statement I will give you, and to go online and look at the source documents, including, for example, a statement signed by biologists and other scientists around the world on basic human sexual biology. Check out the discussion on rare intersex conditions, how those are different from transgenderism, how they don't create new sexes beyond male and female, and note that intersex activists have expressed outrage at the misuse of their conditions by trans activists. The article also lays out the real-world consequences of saying that anyone who feels like a woman is a woman and is thereby entitled to women's sex-based rights and opportunities. The impacts in sports, affirmative action, women-only spaces, and elsewhere are already widespread and severe, and it is absolutely outrageous that we are hounded and harassed for wanting to discuss those impacts. Please understand the context. Anyone who so much as questions whether trans women are literally women subject to being deplatformed, fired from jobs, threatened with violence, assaulted, and worse. That's why it is hard for people like me to speak. This is my first time publicly speaking on this. And ironically, those who are attacked include a lot of trans people who do not agree that trans women are literally women. None of what's happening is new, of course. In the 1800s, for example, Lucinda Stone was called all sorts of horrible things, and she faced angry protests whenever she spoke. On one occasion, people actually poured icy water over her as she spoke. She put on her shawl and she kept speaking. The speakers on February 1st are following in Lucinda Stone's footsteps and in the footsteps of Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and others. They keep standing up to speak, despite vicious lies about them, constant danger, the destruction of their livelihoods. So the issue is not whether the library should allow hate speech, because the speakers don't engage in that. The issue is whether a repressive mob will persuade this library to deny civil rights proponents the chance to speak. It's whether it will deny people like me the chance to hear them. So please hold firm, and thank you for letting this event go forward on February 1st.
Thank you. Bruce Leslie.
Everybody in this discussion supports full civil and human rights for all, including for transgender people. Yet, in the controversy over the gender-critical event scheduled for February 1st, reality has been turned on its head. Contrary to all scientific evidence, some transgender activists insist that a person born with a male body, male chromosomes, male primary and secondary sex characteristics is really a woman if they say they are. People have every right to believe so, but they don't have the right to impose that non-material version of reality on everybody else. In the parable of the emperor's new clothes, trans activists would have us denounce the boy who dared to speak up for material reality as dangerous and hateful. Gender-critical feminists have been slandered as transphobic and as denying trans people's very existence. This is utter sophistry. If you don't believe in Catholicism, you're not denying the existence of Catholics. If you don't believe in Islam, you're not denying the existence of Islamists. If you don't believe in God, or that the earth is flat, or in biblical creationism, you're not denying the existence of those that do. There is nothing right-wing, hateful, or reactionary in supporting women's rights, gay and lesbian rights, children's health, and material reality. There is nothing right-wing, hateful, or reactionary in calling attention to the fact that gender ID and gender self-ID and the insistence that all must uncritically accept the slogan that trans women are women sets up serious conflicts with the rights of women and other oppressed groups. There is only one right-wing reactionary current in this controversy, and it is represented by those who, like grand inquisitors of old, would insist that any who do not pledge allegiance to the accuser's subjective beliefs must be silenced, censored, and shunned. The Seattle Public Library and the community at large must stand up to this bullying and decisively reject all attempts at thought control and suppression of free speech. And I'm also attaching for the panel an article which goes deeper into these issues with links and resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Min Lin.
Hi, thanks for giving me a chance to speak. I would like to just take a minute to imagine what sort of a meeting we would be having today if the Gender Justice League had booked a meeting room. And all of us who don't agree with the Gender Justice League had inundated the library with phone calls, some of them threatening, had threatened to cancel the event and had called for cancellation. What would we all be saying then? The library is open to all. Libraries have long had a tradition of being a place where opinions, diverse opinions, every diverse opinion is welcome and is voiced. And some of those opinions, as the library has often told me, makes some of us uncomfortable. Some people are uncomfortable with other things that happen at the library. When those people are uncomfortable with those things that happen at the library, they're actually sponsored by the library. They are told that if you don't like that program, you are welcome to not attend. I would suggest that that is what can happen at this event. If you do not want to hear the women of Wolf speak about their views, you do not have to attend. You do not have the right to tell the rest of us that we may not come. I want to make it really clear, because there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding here, that some people do not seem to understand the concept of a meeting room. The library is not sponsoring, hosting, or putting on this event. This is not a Seattle Public Library event. The library is simply renting out a meeting room which is available to all. Therefore, it's not really the place of the library to even decide whether or not this event goes through. And it has been confirmed by the ACLU that the library may not legally cancel this event based on anyone's view. It is illegal to cancel this event, and it is also unconscionable. I would encourage those of you who are here perhaps today, or who may be thinking otherwise in the community, if you disagree with the views of the Women's Liberation Front, I would highly encourage you to book your own event. And I, for one, would allow it to go forward. Thank you very much.